welcome to the webinar, Generate Media Coverage for Your Business. My name is Larochelle, and I will guide you through the presentation today. This webinar is being recorded, so to keep a good quality of sound, your lines have been muted. But if you have any questions, you can use the message box on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Now, to be able to hear this presentation, you must join the audio part of it using a phone line, and you've got all the directions there on your screen. So before we get to the main topic, let me tell you a little bit about us. Our agency, Dennis Ratzo Public Relations, is made of 4 team members. We work with a whole range of different clients in different industries and businesses of different sizes. And what we do essentially is help them stand out in the corporate jungle. There's so much noise out there. You need to stand out if you want to cut through the clutter and make sure that your customers hear about you. So that's what we do. And I'll tell you a little bit more about public relations in a couple of minutes. And a little bit about me as well. I'm passionate about educating and mentoring people on all aspects of public relations. And I have a particular interest in helping small business owners, helping them understand how they can use public relations for their business. So this whole webinar series, of which today is the first session, is part of this effort of making PR, or public relations, more accessible to the small business market. Let's have a look at what we're going to cover today. First of all, I'll talk to you about my 5 rules of media engagement. Then we'll look at how to liaise with journalists. I'll give you some media interview tips. We'll discover what actually makes news. We'll look at the media relay structure. And finally, at the pitch. Before even thinking of writing a media release or liaising with a journalist, there are a few things you need to be aware of, and I call these things the 5 rules of media engagement. Starting with the first rule, understand the media. It's very important to know how the different media operate. If we look at print, for example, what you need to look at is the frequency. So do they get published daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly? Because what they're looking for will change in consideration of how often they get published. For example, with daily, they have shorter deadlines. A deadline is the cutoff time by which a story has to be submitted before it gets published. So those dailies have to file stories every day. So they need to get their story done very quickly. It's better with the dailies to contact them in the morning, except, for example, with online dailies that get published at midday. There are a few of them out there. And if they get published at midday, then it's better to contact them in the afternoon because in the morning they're very busy getting their stories written. In terms of the weekly print publication, their deadlines are normally 3 to 4 days. And it's important not to contact them just the day before publication because they're very busy, again, filing their stories. With the monthly and the quarterly publications, they have long deadlines of 3 months. So that means that if you want a story to get published in May, for example, or in June, today being February, you really need to think about getting in touch with them now because they're now planning for the issue coming out in May or June. Another important element about print publication is the importance of good photography. And these photos with print have to be 300 dpi. A dpi is the resolution of your photos, it's the pixels in it. And it has to be high so that when it's printed, it's good quality. Now, if we have a look at online publications, online are sponges for news. They need more and more and more. And the good thing about online is it's instantaneous. Everything happens very quickly, and it's there forever. So if you have a very good story going online, your story will be there forever, most likely. So that's brilliant. However, if it's a bad story, then it's a very different story there. The good thing about online as well is those news sites rank really highly in Google. So that adds credibility to your business. And another good thing as well is they're updated very regularly. So they always need more content. With online, the images can be low resolution. So you don't need to have very good quality photos for that. In terms of broadcast, what you need to know is whether it's going to be pre-recorded or live. If it's live, obviously you get one shot at it. But even with pre-recorded, because television and radio have so much to do, it's better to get it done and well done quite quickly as well. Another thing to remember is to provide succinct answers. So answers that have all your key messages in a very short, tight answer. Rule number 2, understand the journalist. So if you look at that picture there and you see how much of a mess this desk is, well, imagine that in an inbox. Because that's the inbox of a journalist. They get hundreds of emails every day. They're pressured to deliver a good story which will keep their readers and their advertisers happy. So you need to understand that and be very patient when you liaise with journalists. And it's good to understand the specific journalists you're liaising with. So Google their name, check them out on LinkedIn or on Twitter, read their articles. So what do they write about? What are their interests? What's their writing style? So that will help you in providing them with a story angle that will really be good for them. Rule number 3, understand what's topical. You need to know that to be able to provide a good story angle to the journalist. So what is topical? For example, topics that are of interest all year round, things related to the environment, to politics, or topics that are trendy, social media, for example, or topics that are really hot right now. So say if the Biggest Loser television series has just started, so topic related to weight loss could be quite interesting right now. Or there could be different seasons, for example, the wedding season. So in March and November, every year in Australia is the wedding season. So during those times, the media will probably be looking out for some wedding-related stories. Or there could be some topics as well of interest in your own industry that you'd like to look at, some trends. I've got a couple of tips here to help you understand and identify what's topical. The first one is a lot of media outlets actually have features lists for the year ahead. They actually plan a year in advance the different features they will be writing about. So you can check their website or ask their editors or their advertising reps for their features list. Another tip is to use sourcebottle.com.au. That's SOURCE, bottle.com.au. And SourceBottle helps journalists find sources of information. So a journalist might be writing a story on financial advice for small business, for example, and they will ask SourceBottle to include in their e-newsletter a call-out for an expert, a financial expert, to give them the advice for small business. So you should register on SourceBottle so you can receive the journalist call-outs in your industry. So that will help you identify story opportunities. Let's have a look at rule number 4, deadlines. So a deadline is a cut-off time by which a story has to be submitted before publication. And deadlines are critical. Every media outlet and every journalist has a deadline. So if you get called for an interview or for a story idea or for an image, find out when that deadline is and stick to it. That's very important. You need to be very responsive, otherwise you will miss out on the opportunity. Rule number 5, editors have the last word. So even if you had an interview and the journalist said it was going in, and they might even have said when it was going in, it might not happen. It could be because the editor wasn't sure of the story, or they needed more advertising space, or something else happened that was more newsworthy than your own story. So that's very important to keep it in mind. Until it happens, you never know. So now that you know some of the basic rules of engagement, what are the different ways to liaise with a journalist? Should you go with a media release or a pitch? So the difference is with media releases, it's general news relevant to many media outlets. So for example, a company anniversary, winning an award, launching a new product or a new service. Whereas the pitch is a more personalized approach. It's very targeted. So it's a story specific to one media outlet, one publication. And with social media these days, the nature of news has changed a lot. So news travel really quickly and they become all news even quicker. So that has resulted in less journalists and newsrooms. And these journalists that are left are actually looking for a story that's quite special and unique to them, and also a story that's quite in-depth. So they're looking at more reporting on what is happening rather than staying on the surface. So there's a growing trend for pitch versus media release because of all this. In terms of how to liaise with journalists, email or phone, some of them prefer emails, others prefer phone. So you just need to try to see which one works best. Generally speaking, if you give a phone call first, they'll have an email ready to go because they will probably say, could you please send that through to me in an email? So at least you're ready to go as soon as you hang up. Also, as a general rule, I normally will send an email first a lot of the times and then follow it up with a phone call. Your email will most likely get lost in the crowd of emails, so the phone call is still important. So you've liaised with your journalist and you've got a media interview. You have a journalist calling you. Here's a few questions for you to ask the journalist to help you prepare for that interview. So when is your deadline? As I mentioned, that is very important. So when would they like to do the interview? The next question is, what media are you calling from? Obviously, you want to know what sort of media you'll be doing the interview with, and which section of that newspaper, radio, television, or online mag is the interview for. Another question you can ask them is what sort of story angle they're writing about. What are they actually looking for? And is someone else being interviewed? That's always a good thing to know as well. And last but not least, if it's a radio or television interview, is it live or pre-recorded? So these are a few questions you can take note of to help you best prepare for your next media interview. And so what about tips once you are at that media interview? What actually should you or should you not say or do? First off, very important to remember, there is no such thing as off the record. Anything you say to a journalist could be printed. So it's very important to take care of what you say. Second, stick to the point. So have your key messages ready to go and use them and give some short, clear answers. Give yourself time to think. It's okay to hear the question and take those few seconds to just think about what your best answer to that question is. Have something to say. Don't be afraid to be a little bit controversial. That will make your interview a lot more interesting without being too controversial. Be interesting and relevant. Give some examples to really demonstrate your facts or to demonstrate what you've done. Be enthusiastic. This comes across so much in an interview. So just be very enthusiastic in your answers. Mind your language. Shouldn't use any jargon, for example, and just use very simple words that everyone can understand. Mind your posture. So if you're doing a phone interview, our voice carries always better when we're standing, so it's a good idea to stand during your interview. And if you're doing a face-to-face interview, obviously think of your clothing. So if you have company branded clothing, make sure you wear that. So what is news? What's interesting for the media? The first thing is new is news. So the release of new products or services is interesting. And this newness gives your organization a promotional advantage. So you should really make sure you capitalize on that while it is still new and current. Timely, an angle that ties in with a hot topic or a trend or current affair, something that's happening now. People are interested in people, so show the human element behind your business. Some charity or local school support, an interesting employee program, for example, anything that shows that human side. A survey. You read in the media every day, according to a recent survey the media goes nuts for statistics and trends. And one way to gain these is to undertake some research. So you could do that via your database, via your website, or there are a few research companies out there that you could be using as well. Providing the media with a list is another good idea. The top 20 trends in your industries or 10 tips, for example, they're headlines that appear on a daily basis in the media. So review what trends are happening in your industry or what tips you could be giving and format these into a media release. Competitions or giveaways are particularly good for community newspapers or magazines. So you could give away, if you're a service company, a 2-hour consultation, for example, or you could give away some of your products or a year's membership, depending on what your business is about. You might also be holding an event, for example, a breakfast seminar that people can attend, so that could make it into your local newspaper. If you read a story in your industry from a journalist that is quite interesting and you think I can offer a different point of view on that, well, it's a good idea to follow up on that journalist, refer to their story, and say how you could add a different perspective. There are so many national something day, week, or months out there. So you might be able to come up with an angle that ties in with these events. So, for example, there's World Environment Day in June or Heart Week in May. So do a Google search and see what events throughout the year are happening that could be relevant for you, for your business. Journalists are interested in challenges you have overcome. They want to show, again, it goes back to that human interest. They want to show stories that their readers can relate to and learn tips from. So that's another good way to look at a news angle. And last but not least, a case study. Successful case studies of your clients using your services or your products are particularly effective and interesting to media outlets in your industry. And those case studies also carry the implied endorsement from your clients. It's showing you off as the organization behind their success. So now that you know what makes news, let's have a look at the structure of a media release. The typical media release structure is one of the inverted pyramid, like here. You must have seen that in the past. What's important is to have at the top of the media release your most important elements, including the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And then you go down in terms of importance to the least important element in your release. Another way to look at the structure, first at the top you have media release written, then with the date. Then you can include, if you want to provide interviews or high images, you could just write in your media release, interviews available on request or high-res images available on request. Then you have a headline, and your headline should be catchy, relevant, and short. And then the copy goes again from the most important to the least important, starting with the 5 W's and H, and some more details. You may like to add some quotes, for example, from the managing director of the business or from clients. And then you have the key messages that describe the business, as well as the contact details. And at the bottom, the very bottom of your media release, you include contact details for the media, so they know who to call if they want to organize the interview or ask for an image. I've got an example here for you. We have on our website all our media releases for our clients, so feel free to go have a look to find a bit of inspiration in terms of how to write your media releases. And our website is www.drpr.com.au. So, if we have a look at a media release, so we have at the top media release with the date. Then we have a quirky headline, new LED Lenser, the extreme and the extremely small. So we know that LED Lenser is quite a well-known brand for the media where we're sending the media release to. So that's why we decided to include the name there. And the extreme and the extremely small is quite catchy. Then we have the most important element, that is the who. So it's about LED Lenser, which is an international leader in portable LED light products. And the what, which is the releasing new torches in their range of torches. Then as we go down in the media release, we have more details on each of the torches. And we have the contact details as well in terms of the website and a phone number. And then at the very end, very bottom of the media release, we have for media requests. They can call us. So that gives you an example of a media release. What is to avoid in a media release? First, long sentences. Keep it short. Second, jargon and acronyms. industry acronyms. Make sure they are spelled out. Make sure the words you use are simple, easy to understand for everyone. Avoid any sort of salesy statements. It should be a lot more factual than salesy. In terms of using emotions and adjectives, you can, in quotes. Apart from that, avoid again. And avoid any buzzwords like end-to-end solution. That is probably one of the worst, but there are so many out there which you should really be avoiding. In terms of distributing your media release, you have in the subject line of your email, media release with the headline. If you know the journalists to who you're sending the media release to, or if it only goes to a small handful, it would be quite recommended to tailor your email with their name. So, hi, Philip. I thought you would be interested in the media release before because of the features you have coming up, for example. So the more tailored it can be, the more successful it will be. If you send it to a whole group, do not forget to BCC them. You do not want all the media to see who else the media release was sent to. That is very important. And also follow up your media release. Now, follow-ups should be very targeted. What are the key media you would like to get in? And it is not just about giving them a call and saying, have you received my media release? They have most likely received it. It's more about offering them more, offering them maybe a different angle that wasn't included in the media release, offering them some new images that you have, or an interview, for example. So that's about the media release. The pitch. What's important when you pitch a story to one particular journalist? Your email should capture the reporter's attention. So you're competing for their attention. They get hundreds of emails. So you have to make sure you grab that attention. And you can grab it with an interesting fact or something a bit humorous, something controversial, something related to a story they've already written, for example. The other element the pitch needs to include is why should they care about your story? What's in it for them? And most importantly, what's in it for their readers? Why will their readers like to read that particular story? Obviously, what's the story about? What are the main elements? So those 5 W's and H, again, should be included in your pitch email. And if there are any timely elements that would cause the reporter to want to do the story now versus later, that should be emphasized as well. Another thing is you need to be concise. So as I've been mentioning again and again, journalists get a lot of emails. So be straight to the point, short and sweet. So some key points to remember from today's webinar. The first one is to be newsworthy. If you want to get any sort of media coverage, your story and goal has to be interesting and relevant. Not only that, but it has to be tailored to the journalist you are sending it to. You also need to be on time. Those deadlines I mentioned are crucial. If you want to get that opportunity, you need to be there at the right time. And last but not least, don't give up. Just keep trying different things, different techniques, different media. There's so many opportunities out there, so you just try. So that's it for the main content of the webinar. I know it's a lot to take in, but hopefully I've managed to get the points across. So before we conclude, I'd like to set a bit of a challenge for you. We all access a lot of very valuable information to help us grow or transform our businesses. But until we do anything with this information, we're not going anywhere. So what I would like each of you to do is to pick one action item from this presentation you will commit to taking on board over the next week. I'll just give you a few seconds to write that one down. If you'd like to share it with me, I will have on the last slide my contact details. I would love to hear about your action item and how you went with implementing it. So please feel free to send me an email. Now, before we finish off, a few upcoming webinars which you may be interested in. On the 15th of February, I will cover the essential components of a great website. So how can you make sure your customers come back to your website? On the 29th of February, I will discuss LinkedIn. How can it be used as a business tool? How can you make the most of it? And last but not least, on the 7th of March, I will look at Facebook and Twitter. And all these webinars are held from 12 to 1 p.m. Sydney time. And you can have a look at the details and register to any of those on our website, drpr.com.au. So thank you very much for your attendance. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact me via Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, email. So there's no shortage of communication these days. When this webinar closes, you will be redirected to a short questionnaire, and I would really appreciate you taking 2 minutes to answer the 5 questions and give me your feedback on this presentation. On this, I wish you all a great rest of the day. Thank you.